So we were talking about Beast Wars as a podcast about two comedians rewatching the 1990s TV series Beast Wars Transformers. Although we are discussing a children's television show, the podcast itself is not intended for children. Hey Phil, I feel like this truce that we've worked out with Apetimus has been going great. Is that just me, or do you think so too?
Oh no, I felt it too. It has been so peaceful and reasonable lately.
And I was surprised how readily Apetimus agreed to it too when we said, Apetimus, we've got some stuff going on. We would really like it if we could call a truce and for you to stop showing up and really insulting our physiques, intelligence, hygiene, ability to make other living creatures like us. And he just said yes without any argument.
Yeah, he also insulted my lack of commensurate hirsuteness, which I didn't even know he knew what that word meant.
I think a mecha gorilla is like a banana, and that they have at least 2 layers.
I'm so glad Apetimus isn't here to hear that. He would have bopped us over the head with something.
Or maybe not, because we've got this great truce going on.
I hope this just continues forever and ever and ever.
Oh my god! Look out! What's that? Ah! You said I couldn't insult you. You never said anything about rolling a boulder over your ass.
God, it hurts. What were we talking about?
So, we were talking about Beast Wars.
We were talking about Beast Wars. I'm Phil Thomas.
I'm Andy Hunter. Thank you for joining us. Today we are discussing Season 1, Episode 24, Before the Storm. We are really coming in towards the end of the season, and this episode really is set up for the 2-part season finale.
Yeah, this really does feel like a primer episode. This doesn't feel like an encapsulated episode of any kind. This is clearly just a preface for whatever's about to happen in the next few episodes.
Yeah. The episode is written by Larry DiTilio. We've talked about him a bunch. He's one of the 2 head writers of the show. And it is directed by Adam Wood. This is the only Beast Wars episode he directed, but he was a supervising animator for the series, and he worked in animation and visual effects on a bunch of stuff, and did direct a number of other things. The episode starts with Megatron in the jungle, and he sees a glowing mountain. Then we cut over to Megatron napping in his chair, and his computer wakes him up and informs him basically of the same thing. He says, this could be it, meaning he's been expecting or wondering about something, I guess. But I did have a couple of notes here. While he's napping in his chair, the eyes on his T-Rex head hand are like looking around. I know it's meant to be a cute gag, but it does have weird implications along with a couple later scenes in this episode where one, he's like talking to his hand and petting it, and it closes its eyes appreciably, the way a dog or cat does when it likes you petting it. Later on, he's brushing its teeth. Does it have its own mind? It looking around while he's sleeping, was that something he was subconsciously doing while dreaming? Can he see through it when it's his hand?
So I noticed that too. I missed the part where he was brushing the teeth of the T-Rex head, which definitely sounds quite funny. I do like this trope a lot, though. It reminds me a little bit of Inspector Gadget. Every time you would see the villain in Inspector Gadget, he would always be petting a cat.
Yeah.
There's just a petting a cat by a villain theme that probably didn't make it to contemporary times, but in the 90s was kind of a well-known trope.
Yeah.
And I do think it's really funny. I just wish they had done this a little more consistently in other episodes, because I do like the idea that once he pulls his consciousness out of the head, there's still some residual baseline AI just keeping the dino part of its brain going.
Yeah, I agree. If they were going to do this, it would have been nice had it been a runner throughout the whole season. Because as anyone who has seen the second season onward, in the second season, he no longer has that head hand. So it's late in the game sort of to introduce it. But yeah, but then that is funny to think if there were a little bit of T-Rex AI operating his head, would that also then mean that Cheetor's chest would sometimes like growl or something?
Does anybody else have a head hand, or is he the only Transformer?
He's the only one in the show.
Wait, Quick Strike.
Oh, and then yeah, in second season, the Quick Strike, which is never a head. It's his tail that just happens to then also be a Cobra head. And I don't remember if we ever know, like, can he see through it when it's his tail?
Yeah, I don't think he ever treats it like it's a separate entity.
Yeah, not that I remember.
But definitely agreed that that was a trope that I enjoyed and that they should persist.
Yeah. Another note about this scene. On the wall, you can see a portrait on the wall of himself in what appears to be a pre-Beast Wars body.
A little bit of world building for Megatron. I think I missed that too. Good job by you spotting that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that Megatron is definitely the type of person to have a big portrait of himself on the wall. You and I don't know anybody in real life who would have a giant portrait of themselves.
Yeah, we definitely don't because we moved apartments and I haven't hung it up yet, but it is right here. And by it, I mean one of them.
So now we see the mountain. The top caves in, revealing it to be a hollow chamber, which of course made me think, are there any mountains on this planet that are just regular mountains made of rock?
No, they're all like those eggs that you would pay 25 cents for in a machine outside a supermarket. They're all just full of something. Some of them have Smarties or Pez or a plastic ring in them.
You know, every time they pass by a mountain, Scorponok's trying to crack one open and be like, I don't know, maybe there's some missiles inside.
Aw, just for him. I bet there's one somewhere.
Inside this hollow mountain, there's an obelisk in the middle of a small pool of water, which then, as rocks from the cave-in hit the water, you see the most 90s CGI water ripples you've ever seen.
You know, one thing about this obelisk, there are a lot of ancient aliens themes in Beast Wars. And I certainly didn't understand what Ancient Aliens was before Beast Wars or when we were watching it as teenagers. Because, like, you know, there's an obelisk, and an obelisk is ostensibly something you would find in ancient Egypt. So what they're implying is that obelisks actually come from this alien culture. And I guess by association that the pyramids are also from this alien culture, which is somewhat of a contemporary ancient aliens alternative anthropology theme or trend. And I guess that's been in existence and in popular culture for a lot longer than I realized.
Yeah, I guess I kind of saw the obelisk as, even though it's not actually really very similar at all to how the obelisk in 2001, A Space Odyssey is depicted, I wondered, was it an homage to that idea of some sort of ancient alien intelligence? But yeah, I think in general, people have always liked ideas of how do things come to be. Like, you know, thousands of years ago, it was the belief that there were gods that gave us the knowledge of how to do things. And then as aliens became more in the popular consciousness, some people thought aliens was the explanation that makes sense.
That's a really good point. We thought that it was us who created weapons or showed us how to make weapons, when it turns out it was just Dinobot in season 2.
It's true. Oh, man. We got to get back on a regular schedule so we can finally get to Code of Hero.
I know, right? I can't wait for season 2.
On this obelisk, there is another golden disc that looks very similar to the one that we know the Predacons stole just before the events of the first episode. Inferno shows up. He seemed to have been digging a hole because he emerges from the ground, but that is preceded by some loud blasting sounds. So I wonder, was he, even though he was in ant form, was he using dynamite or something to blast this tunnel? I could buy that from Inferno.
Surprised they trusted him with something delicate like another one of the discs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Megatron wouldn't have known it was one of the discs, but he would have known that it seemed like an alien energy signature. So it does seem odd that he wouldn't have wanted to check that out himself, but certainly he was aware that he was sending one of his most loyal lieutenants. Not his most competent lieutenant necessarily, but certainly his most loyal one.
And somebody berserk enough to not care about the energon surges and just rip it right off of the obelisk.
Which is what he does. And then Megatron, when he is later examining it, he says that it reveals something he had long suspected. And we also get what is, I think, the first instance of Inferno addressing Megatron as my queen.
Love it.
Yep. We now see Optimus flying around, seeking a sign of the anomaly that Tigatron reported. And assuming that everything we've been shown has been happening in sequence, it gives the impression that Tigatron saw this glowing mountain, called it in, but then didn't actually go to the mountain to investigate himself. It's just like, all right, Optimus will get to it tomorrow. But then I thought maybe what happened was Tigatron called it in, and Optimus said, great, I can be there tomorrow. And Tigatron says, well, I'll check it out in the meantime. And then Optimus said, seems like a dangerous situation where you could maybe get your ass kicked. How about you just let me handle this, buddy?
Oh, yeah. I'm assuming he just went, remember what happened the last time? They just show Tigatron getting his ass handed to him on that floating island over and over and over again.
Actually, once he got to the floating island, he was okay. It was just he was not good at defending himself from Pterosaur and Waspinator before the floating island. He was not very good at taking on all the Predacons in Inferno's debut episode. And he was not very good at shooting at Inferno without blowing up a mountain and killing his tiger girlfriend.
Oh my God, that's all so much worse. But you are right.
So anyway, a Predacon probe shows up with a hologram of Megatron, inviting Optimus to neutral territory to discuss a truce. And neutral territory turns out to be either a mountaintop that's way above the cloud cover or an island in a weird alien sea of fog. And we see Optimus flies there, but it's really interesting to imagine how Megatron got there.
Yeah, how did they get here? And it's such an austere environment. Okay, but before that, when we have the hologram of Megatron appear to Optimus, he says, I wanted to talk. And then Optimus is like, okay, talk. Megatron is like, not here in person. And I was like, actually, now is the perfect time to have this conversation.
Yeah. I wonder if some of these decisions were made with, they had an initial run of the script that didn't quite run the right length. And so then they rejiggered some things because I think you could have easily just had the scene where Optimus shows up on the mountaintop and he says, well, Megatron, I couldn't believe it when you said you had something important to talk about, but here I am. I don't think we needed the scene at all where Megatron invites him to talk. You can just have the meeting happen.
Yeah, it seems like that would be where they met up to exchange hostages, or Megatron says, I've got the golden disc. I'll trade it to you for blah. Meet me at the top of the mountain alone and we'll exchange it. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense that maybe this is the only place that's neutral territory, since every other place in the show that Maximals want to be seems to be in Predacon territory. So I guess this austere, in middle of nowhere mountaintop is the only place Predacons haven't claimed.
It's funny, the map of Maximal and Predacon territory is just a donut. It's just a small hole where the Axelon is, and then everything else. That would certainly match their egos.
Yeah.
It's funny, the design of the mountaintop is pretty cool too. I think when Apetimus saw me watching the episode, is somebody talking about Apetimus over here? Oh, hey, Andy.
Hey, Apetimus. Yeah, it sounds like Phil was saying you had some thoughts about this scene in the show.
Oh, yeah. You don't want him summarizing my thoughts. You want to get the straight dope.
Yeah.
So, when Optimus Primal and Megatron met on the top of that mountain, it reminded me of one of those arenas from an old video game called Soul Calibur 2. And you know what I thought, brother? That was a perfect opportunity for an old-fashioned ring out. That's right, Megatron. And I'ma ring in the new year by wringing your neck and then wringing you out. Cause ain't nobody gonna mess with the Max Monkey, the Mad Maximal. There's no Soul Edge here, just one Soul Edge Lord. The Duke of Destruction, the Prince of Prowess, the Viceroy of Victory, the Kaiser of Chaos, the Pharaoh of Fisticuffs, the despot of, guess what? The one, the only, Apetimus Prime!
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see how that scene would have gone differently if it had been you there, Apetimus, instead of Optimus. And I definitely take your point that that did very much remind me of a late 90s, early 2000s fighting arena. It would be a perfect place, just kick a dude off into the fog. I was wondering, what would you have done if one of your enemies called and said they wanted to have a truce?
I would have said no.
I was kind of expecting something kind of grandiose, like none of my enemies live long enough to request a truce. But I think you said it perfectly, as you always do.
That's right, brother. I also don't think anybody should request a truce, because we know how the saying goes. The truce hurts.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Apetimus out, and remember, kids, go apeshit.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about how that's his catchphrase, Phil.
Yeah, I know. There's so many things that I'm remembering later in the season. And it's like, man, I'm forgetting all of these tags. But we'll nail all this stuff in season 2.
Oh yeah, for sure. Megatron says he is there to discuss a truce. Optimus replies, when Predacons talk truce, it just means they need time to reload their weapons. So clearly he's changed his thinking a lot since the first episode when he was pointing out that there's been centuries of peace between Maximals and Predacons.
Oh, that's a good point. That was also a really good zinger.
Yeah. But Megatron says, no, listen, dude, I just have bigger things to focus on than the Beast Wars right now. And I know you're going to accept this truce because you're a Maximal and you just can't help giving peace a chance.
Unbelievable. He's lucky Optimus and not Apetimus showed up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Rat Trap and Dinobot are united in their disbelief about Optimus accepting this truce. But then they're like, well, still, though, we have to figure out what Megatron is up to. What information has he come into that is so important to him that he doesn't want to have to deal with us? So it seems like he is assigning Rat Trap the job to infiltrate the Predacon base. Over at the Predacon base, Tarantulas is hacking into some storage unit to get a transwarp module.
Has transwarp cell or any kind of transwarp technology, has that been talked about prior to this, that term?
I don't remember specifically like transwarp cell or transwarp module. I remember in Victory, they talked about engine components or something that they were looting from the Predacon ship. But I guess clearly they didn't take all their stuff because the Predacons had some of this transwarp stuff still here. Waspinator confronts Tarantulas, and Tarantulas blows him up with an old-fashioned bomb made from a bunch of TNT taped together with a clock.
So, like, what are we playing? Red Dead Redemption?
Yeah, it's as the cartoony elements of the show go, that I'm much more okay with than some of the other stuff that happens sometimes. But Megatron is seeing all this in the security feed, and he readily incorporates it into his own plan by telling Black Arachnia to investigate. And that is the scene where he's petting his hand like it's a pet. All right, and now we've got Airazor taking Rat Trap to the Predacon base, ostensibly for his infiltration mission.
Yeah, really discreet.
Yeah. And then they get shot at by these huge arrays of auto turrets. And it just made me wonder, like, the Predacons, their base defenses seem to cover a much larger area than the Maximals' base defenses are. Because the Maximals' base defenses appear to just be Sentinel and, autocannons on the Axolot itself. Whereas the Predacons control a fair amount of territory around their base. Whereas the Maximals are always like, oh, the Predacons have just shown up and are in the middle of bombing us before Sentinel said anything to us,
There is a discrepancy there, but I buy it just based on the fact that it seems like from the very beginning, the Predacons were a military outfit and the Maximals were a research vessel.
Yeah.
So I can buy that they had a bunch of armaments and like deployable guns to help establish owning land and then take more area. So this is a place where I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they try to sneak Rat Trap in, but are caught and kicked out. Although it is an ostensibly polite conversation with Megatron, where he says, "Oh, sorry for shooting at you. Please, both of you go away." As Rat Trap and Air Razor are relaying all this to Optimus, Rat Trap says he'd hate to be an encyclopedia salesman in that neighborhood. And while he does that, he pulls some data pads out from his chest. I didn't really think that the line needed like visual assistance for us to get the point. But in 1996, I feel like that was, at best, the very tail end of door-to-door encyclopedia salesman being a thing.
Do you think kids today would get that reference at all?
Probably not.
Not only would they not know what an encyclopedia salesman was, they probably also wouldn't even know what an encyclopedia is.
I mean, maybe they'd get it and like, oh, is that some old version of Wikipedia?
Like an old version of Urban Dictionary.
But it turns out that was all just a distraction so Tigatron could enter the Predacon base through just like a big gaping hole in the Predacon base wall, which I feel like I get it. The Predacons are much more interested in showing force through lots of guns. But I feel like if I were Megatron, I'd be like, all right, let's melt down one of those 30 auto turrets into a patch of wall.
Yeah, that's what Megatron and Optimus should have been doing on the mountaintop. He should have traded the golden disc for several of those ballistic shields that they could use to patch up parts of the Predacon base.
Yeah, and maybe even build some of them into some floor over their giant pools of lava.
Yeah, they should get on that.
Well, don't worry. I mean, those pools of lava surely won't come back to bite them in any way.
No, not even one or two of them.
No. While Tigatron is in the base, Black Arachnia confronts Tarantulas. Well, she does is she's kicking around Waspinator's head. I mean, that guy just gets no respect. Like, why? I mean, I guess Waspinator is just so easily bullied, but it's hard to believe that by the end of the first season, he hasn't, if not outright defected to the Maximals, at least just gone off on his own.
I agree. Is the head the funniest body part to kick in? I think it would have also been kind of funny if she kicked in like an arm holding his gun.
Well, it being his head, though, lets them add some sound effects here and there. While Tarantulas is distracted talking with Black Arachnia, Megatron is then able to hack the transwarp cell to add programming of his own. And like we said, I don't think they've really talked about what a transwarp module or a transwarp cell is up to this point and what role it plays in ship operation and why it would need special programming. Like, I was kind of assuming it was just the thing that lets a ship that is otherwise space-worthy enter transwarp. I guess I assumed that the transwarp cell would have been more a mechanical thing than a programmable computer thing.
I always took it to be whatever the primary method of propulsion was for traveling across vast distances of space was linked to some sort of element that was specifically in that, like uranium. There's some sort of thing like that in the middle.
I'm just saying I wouldn't have envisioned that it was something that had programming.
Oh.
I would assume it's like the ship itself is what is programmed to use the transwarp cell to do the transwarp stuff.
That's a good point.
Like, I don't program gas before I put it into my car.
Yeah, it's not like it's a Bitcoin. It's not like it's made of code or anything.
Yeah.
I do have one question. When Tarantulas and Black Arachnia are arguing, Megatron sees this as his opportunity to hack the transwarp cell. The code is ATT override.
Mm-hmm.
That was oddly specific, and I was trying to figure out, what does ATT stand for? Do you have a guess?
I did see this on the wiki page about this when I was looking up that big portrait of him. It is a shout out to the Usenet newsgroup alt.toys.transformers.
Oh.
And we have a couple of times talked about how early on and really throughout the show's run, the creators of the show did use fans as a resource for information about the old show.
That's a pretty cool bit of fan service there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tigatron hacks into the Predacon computer by plugging a wire. So he takes a wire out of his chest and plugs it into the computer. Then he takes another wire out of his shoulder and plugs it into his head. And I was thinking, if the wire is already coming out of his chest, why does he need to then plug another part into his head? Isn't it already connected to his body? Or is that really just like a pocket that he had it in? And if you had an x-ray of Tigatron, you'd see just a wire behind his tiger head that's not actually connected to his body otherwise.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. This also happens elsewhere in the episode. When Inferno is flying at Air Razor, Optimus flies above him, and there's a wire connecting his pelvis to his butt helicopter rotors, and he just yanks it, and Inferno crashes. I was just like, why is that one wire there when everything else is running like directly inside his body?
Yep. At least in that, you can say, like, well, they needed it to make the gag work. But yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And I guess the reason they did the Tigatron thing is because it's a reference to like Mission Impossible, where humans are doing it and they do need those two wires, but still kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, or even more than Mission Impossible, I feel like it was a reference to cyberpunk literature and movies, because then he goes into the 90s cyberpunk vision of virtual reality cyberspace. You see his hands manipulating things around. He's physically, virtually moving from one location to another. And it made me think, wow, remember back when we thought somehow it'd be better to like feel like you have to waste time physically manipulating things and going from one place to another, that would somehow be better than just typing on a keyboard and mouse?
Yeah, and then solving a Rubik's Cube puzzle involving Megatron's Hellraiser inflicted skull.
Yeah. So he does all of that and gets access to the information about the golden disc. Meanwhile, we have Megatron discussing how what he's got now is so much bigger than just getting enough energon to conquer Cybertron. And I am not sure why just yet, because from what I can tell, they still don't yet know that they're on prehistoric Earth. So I don't think he's talking about using the disc to foresee and change the future / his past. So is he just thinking, all right, with this disc, I'll be able to like create some more powerful alien technology?
So that was the point of the mission, right? So even if he doesn't 100% know that they're on Earth, perhaps he feels like this disc gets him one step closer.
Yeah. So the Predacons catch Tigatron. So he's coming in hot. I felt like Tigatron comported himself much better here, just running away from the Predacons. Like he tackled Pterosaur and then he runs away. Like, is Tigatron's problem just like he's not good at using a gun? And if he just focused on tackling and running away, he'd be like the best there is?
Yeah, really, even the playing field there. Yeah, he didn't look as bad. Maybe he's learning. Do you feel like he's learning?
Yep, he's got a long career left on Beast Wars. We'll see him continue to improve throughout the remaining 2 seasons. So the other Maximals give Tigatron some cover. It seems like this truce was very explicitly just about not using their own Cybertron weapons, because hitting each other with boulders and yanking out wires so people fall, that is all okay. And they even call it peaceful. Optimus says, we need peaceful ways of stopping them. Like, I wouldn't call those peaceful. I would just say that they don't involve guns.
Yeah, and also at one point, Optimus is like, we have to maintain the truce. And in my mind, I was just like, why? I mean, at this point, what is important about this truce?
Maybe Optimus is like, listen, this truce, I guess maybe it just took the Beast Wars into a version where we just punch each other instead of shooting at each other, but that's still improvement. Yeah, I don't know. I would also think when one side catches the other side infiltrating their base and stealing information, I feel like that ends the truce.
Yeah, agreed.
Scorponok was like, oh, man, it was close. We almost got him. And Megatron says, well, yes, it's good that we sold this idea. So it would seem to indicate that Tigatron learning about the golden disc and reporting it was all part of his plan. Tigatron then does reveal to all the rest of the Maximals about the disc, that Megatron has translated it, and it is supposedly a beacon to the aliens that we've been seeing so many signs of, and that the aliens are on their way and are angry. But we are left to wonder, is that correct? Or did Megatron put false information there for Tigatron to find and report?
Yeah, that's a good plot twist. The intricacies of this episode, I've mentioned this pet peeve in other episodes. Megatron calls for a truce, and then Optimus is like, is this a double cross? Well, then I'm going to double cross you. And then Megatron's like, just like I knew you would.
Yeah.
And then Optimus is like, just like I knew you knew I would. And then after that, Megatron's like, all right, now that Optimus knows that I would double cross him after he guessed that I would double cross him, I've now successfully double crossed him. It's like this, it just keeps going over and over and over again. And he sees Rat Trap. So they think that he didn't know that Tigatron was going to be there. He had to catch Rat Trap to sell that he didn't willfully let Rat Trap escape with the information. Can you see how confusing I'm starting to find this?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that I think it's why it works so well when there's a comedic scene. We're like, aha, just like I knew that you knew that I knew that you would, because it is so convoluted when it's done seriously.
Perhaps there's that. Shall we play Beast Wars Bingo?
Let's do it.
All right. As far as Beast Wars Bingo moments, fairly light episode. I did not see a bullet train. There was no hanging precariously. There was an animal looking up to the sky, Optimus Primal in beast mode at the end saying, well, that's just Prime.
Yeah. And I feel like Tigatron seeing the glowing mountain at the beginning is borderline.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So we got two. Good job by you. No Optimus body horror moment, inconsistent weapon power. I noted, since when did Inferno have a single wire protruding that would power his butt? No stolen catchphrase, although Tarantulas does impersonate Megatron's voice at one point, and I did find that quite funny.
Yeah.
No prematurely declared dead. The highest Apetimus threat level hit was 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I guess what is the most physically impressive thing that happened? Would it have maybe been Inferno tanking some energon surges and yanking the disc off the obelisk, maybe?
Yeah, that was the toughest thing that was done. And by Optimus himself, I think it was just yanking the wire out.
Yeah.
Also, update for the listeners, there will be no more Fiancé Corner. This gimmick is now known in the future forevermore as Wife Corner. Thank you. Thank you very much. That having been said, there is no Wife Corner this week. Okay, and the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's play Maximize versus Terrorize. Andy, how many times was Maximize said?
I think it might have just been once. I'm gonna guess when Dinobot was like, all right, they're chasing Tigatron. We gotta back him up. And then he transformed and had his weapons out. I think he might have said Maximize then. So that's my guess, that it was once and that was the time.
He did say Maximize exactly at that time, but it was said 2 other times in the episode.
Oh.
Yeah. And what's weird is I watched these being said, and then I didn't remember whether or not they were said, and I had to go back and immediately rewatch them. They're said in like a subtle way where you honestly just couldn't tell that they were said. It was said 2 other times. Air Razor says Maximize when she's being shot by those auto guns. And then Optimus Primal, after Tigatron fires the signal shot from the Predacon base, he says Maximize then. So an episode that I also admit was hard to follow, but it was said 3 times.
Okay.
And now, how many times was Terrorize said?
I'm gonna guess maybe once when Inferno enters the obelisk chamber.
If you hadn't guessed low on Maximize, I think you would have guessed correctly that Terrorize is never said.
Yeah.
Terrorize was never said in the entire episode.
Too much lore. Can't waste any script time on Maximizes and Terrorizes.
Yeah, well, that's what we get for having a truce for so long.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for listening. As we have said, we are coming up on the end of season 1. So to celebrate, we were wondering maybe we should add a couple of categories to Beast Wars Bingo. Any season long notes to talk about? If you have any ideas for those, please send those in to beastwarstalk@gmail.com. And you can also, while you're doing that, feel free to send a question for Apetimus as well. Please subscribe, rate the podcast, spread the word. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for sticking with us through our hiatus. Until next time, I'm Andy Hunter.
I'm Phil Thomas.
And now we have talked about Beast Wars.